Hello, and welcome to Asia in Depth. I'm Michelle Flor-Cruz. In 2015, Shiori Ito, a young Japanese journalist, approached the police with a stunning allegation. Noriyuki Yamaguchi, a prominent editor with close ties to then Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, had drugged and raped her following a meeting to discuss a potential job. The police discouraged Ito from filing a report and subjected her to a humiliating interrogation. Yamaguchi denied the charge, and, despite ample evidence in support of Ito's claim, the police declined to prosecute him. Shiori Ito decided to make her claim public. In doing so, she sparked a reckoning about sexual violence in one of Asia's most deeply patriarchal societies, where an overwhelming majority of rapes are not reported. Ito's allegation is credited with launching Japan's MeToo movement, and it eventually led to a measure of justice. The Japanese government strengthened the country's century-old laws against rape, and in 2019, a court ordered Yamaguchi to pay Ito damages in a civil trial. But sexism remains deeply entrenched in Japan. Last month, the head of the organizing committee of the Tokyo Olympic Games, Yoshiro Mori, resigned after saying that women talk too much. Days later, Japan's governing Liberal Democratic Party announced that it would now allow women to observe its all-male board meetings, provided they don't speak. In this episode of Asia in Depth, we're going to hear much more from Shiori Ito, a member of the Asia Society's Asia 21 network of young leaders. She recently sat down at Asia Society Japan with Japanese journalist Aiko Doden. Ito begins the conversation by discussing what the resignation of Yoshiro Mori tells us about sexism in Japanese society.
It's sad to hear from Mr. Mori that after all of the year of #MeToo and after many talks and news coverage, and we haven't seen him learn from what happened in the past. So of course we were angry, not just because he said that part, just because it hasn't changed over a year and many years. And so him stepping down, I don't think it wouldn't change the issue, or it wouldn't solve the issue. He also say that he often hear that his committee is saying the same things. That's why he's saying, meaning the committee itself is talking in the same way. So it is a big issue, but meaning it has been talked about, top level of, JOC, but it is within our daily life as well, and small organizations for sure. And that is why it triggered many people's, anger.
Mm-hmm. What did you think the news said about our society? You said that it's not just about the close meetings at the JOC, but perhaps it's about the society in general.
It's in our structure, in our system. It's embedded in a deep way. So I was shocked when I saw his so-called apologized, press conference, because I don't think he had a meeting with his team. What was wrong with what he had said? He didn't clearly understand. And till today, I don't think he understood what was wrong. And I am so sad that his team also didn't talk about it, seems like, to him. And that is a main issue. That seems like, I thought, seeing the news, we talked about it so many times, but seems like there are certain people that haven't care about it too much. So, and what he have said about women talks too much, it means that he doesn't want to listen to them. If he listened to what these women were saying with interest, I don't think he would ever felt that they were speaking too long. So I think that shows a lot of his perspective on women.
Right. And as the IOC statement articulated, it's really about inclusion and diversity and gender equality that is at the core of the issue, isn't it? And as you say, there's so much work that we still need to do.
So much work. And I mean, if Mr. Mori is stepping down, what I wish is that him trying to, study from his mistake and bring the awareness why he have done so, why he have said that, to really have a time to think of his past and his responsibility. So if we can hear that from him in one day, I think then we can say that we made a step. But it doesn't make any change, just him quitting. It's not just him.
It's a sort of a message to all of us, perhaps, the society. But there have been questions regarding this news as well. But first, we'd like to hear from you, Shiori-san, with your initial remarks.
So I'm, like what you quoted, there were hashtag don't be silent after what Mr. Mori said. And I think one of the best label that I got many labels as a, victim, as, survivor. But one of the best label I think I got was silence flaker. When I heard that words, I was so empowered because myself, growing up in Japan, I have been silenced to so many years and didn't know how to raise my voice. So when I heard that term, I was so empowered. And people say that I, sparked hashtag MeToo, but I actually talked about my own experience on sexual violence 6 months before the MeToo movement happened. So for me, I felt quite isolated until the MeToo movement happened. I felt the reaction from the public was quite, I guess people couldn't understand why I wanted to talk about the experience. And some said, if you are true Japanese woman, you wouldn't talk about such a shameful things. But that's the thing. That's how we have been silenced. So I decided to, voice out and talk about the thing that I never want to share with anyone. And it was 2017. And the law has changed, but the part that of what we wanted changed the most, which was about consent. Non-consensual sex is rape. It's almost becoming international standard, but it's not in our law, our sex offense law. And right now I have really many emotions because after they have a big changed after in 2017, after, it hasn't changed for past 110 years, it finally changed, but they didn't put the part of consent. And they were given us that we have 3 years to review it. So right now, since last year, there is a committee to talk about what we need to change, what we need to update. And we have, I think next month, March, they are closing the committee and decides what they're going to update. And I just got a message from one of the members saying that, Shiori, I don't think we are making progress on consent. So seems like if the conversation continued this way, it wouldn't change. And that was shocking. After all 3 years of, hearing many voices from survivors, many stories of Me Too, we haven't learned that anything if they don't change the law, structure our lifestyle, daily life. And if, they don't put the part of consent, I don't know what I sacrificed for. So right now, today, thinking about how we can do more than, there are petitions going on online, and I want people to encourage to do so. But what else can we do? And so today I'm very, I have many mixed emotions being with you.
Thank you very much. And of course, living in the pandemic where meeting people or organized gathering for the purpose that you have just articulated has become even more difficult. So transforming the mindset of the people and transforming the norm of society that may ultimately influence the legal structure, that part has become even more difficult. Would you think so?
I So, yeah. And I mean, I think after this pandemic in Japan, we start using hashtag to raise voices, which is amazing change that we've been witness. So again, I want us to really think if we can't change the law, what can happen in our daily life, in our lifestyle, who can protect our rights of our body. So I hope in the end of this session, we have better idea than petition. Yeah.
Okay. But like you said, sexist remarks are not new, unfortunately. What are the social norms behind such comments, do you think?
Well, so as I said, I've been told that if I'm a true Japanese woman, I guess Asian women, they don't talk about this thing, which is, I feel that there are a huge taboo in this topic, especially for victims to speak up. And unfortunately, last year, our lawmaker, our MP, Mio Sugita, also said that women lies and over the sexual accusation. And that was sad that, our lawmaker even say so. And so there are a strong stigma against it still today.
And some cases, some people can be let off the hook by saying that it was just a slip of the tongue. Would you agree?
No, of course not. And if, we know it's not because of, let's say, how Mr. Mori apologized as well, how he didn't recognize what was wrong with his, what he had said. So, no, and we can't just say like that. So, okay, he quit, move on. We can't just let that happen ever again. So this is great time, great opportunity to really highlight these issues.
And I also felt that the fact that there is a hashtag movement, Don't Be Silenced, is created out of the shared understanding that being silent is equally guilty. Do you think that understanding or the mindset is widely being shared today?
I hope so. And, I think one of the reasons why hashtag MeToo didn't become a huge movement in Japan is because people are so worried and, it's scary what can happen after you as a survivor say something, So, and as what I experienced, online harassment, online violence with all these horrible, nasty words towards me, I witnessed. So what needs to happen is, we all can be bystander, and what can we do about it? We need to also, raise our voice because one day it can happen to you. And so me and my friends, we started to think, how can, MeToo be voiced out in Japan? And we thought we have to say we too. So we shouldn't, let anyone to be a victim or bystander. And of course, perpetrator, but bystander is the majority of it. So that's why we have to say something. Right. But I see the changes now online.
And it's not just about like you are witnessing a violent sexual assault in front of your eyes. It's often the case of some sexist comments being made during the meeting, or some bullying happening in the classroom, or some forms of sexual harassment taking place in offices. And there you have the option of whether you remain silent or speak up. And I think that is something that many of us would face in our daily lives.
Exactly.
It's not a really critical moment, but like those moments in our lives where we are we are forced to make decisions, choices ourselves. So we are sort of tested in our daily lives as well.
Exactly.
In that sense.
I think that showed a lot within in what Mr. Mori said, because when he had said the women talks a lot, people around him laughed. That shouldn't happen. If they have the mind of bystander, knowing it's not, it's not okay, then they should have said, hey, I don't think it was, appropriate, and, you shouldn't say that. But we didn't hear that word. So, yeah, it can start from our daily conversation to our meeting any time in a day.
True. You talked about the movement like MeToo growing into a We Too movement. This Don't Be Silent #movement, is it a predominantly younger generation movement? How do you see?
I mean, I don't think it, what I feel whenever I talk about sexual violence in Japan, in the beginning, I felt not many young people were involved. But these days, I see the difference. They use hashtag, and also I think because media have been highlighting this issue as well. And so, yeah, I don't think it's just the young people, but they have amazing voices and they know how to use the social network platforms to do so.
Okay. You are said to be the driving force of MeToo movement in Japan, and then you've constantly said that it should be a We Too movement. But as a survivor and also a journalist, what kind of support is lacking in Japan, do you think?
Well, I think still today, it's only a few percent, about 4% who would go to report to police after the experience of rape. And it's because there are we are lacking this victim support system. So, for instance, there is rape crisis center. Let's say I've been visiting different places in Sweden, London, and Taiwan. But if you go there, even in our neighbor South Korea as well, if you go there, they will help you to report to police. If you go there, you get support for physical treatment, test, and also mental support, psychological support. But in Japan, I can't say that it's fully provided. And that's where I had a struggle with as well. And, so it's also, the social support as well, but it's a lot to do with our education as well, I think.
Because in some schools or some study groups, the people are making an effort to reach out to a younger generation to sort of let them know, what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And what is your right? How can education address this very important but sensitive issue?
So the problem right now is that in Japanese education, it is what lawmakers has to change in our Ministry of Education. But today, the only way we can bring the decent sex education is asking someone from outside, because in teachers' textbook, teachers' rule book, do you call that? I don't know.
The guideline.
It's written that you can only teach after the sperm met egg. So they don't teach about sex. They don't teach, of course, about consent, what happened before.
It's like a biology class.
Exactly. And so what can we learn from that? We really need to talk about consent. What's the right for you? What's the right for others? And how important it is to talk about, to care about. So it's lacking that from the teacher's guidelines. So how can they teach? They have to risk their own, sake to do so, to step into it. So I think it's a lot to do with our Ministry of Education, but also this sex education can also start from a family as well, or locally. So I think there are ways to use. There are amazing YouTubers who's doing so-called. Her name is Shiori Ito. We are same name, Shiori, and she's providing amazing YouTube videos. So there are ways to do so, I think. But if we don't have the idea of consent in our law, and if we don't teach people about idea of consent, I don't think we can ever make a progress on this issue, unfortunately.
True.
We'd like to take a short break to talk about the Asia Society Triennial. The second installment of the Triennial, which begins March 26 at Asia Society Museum in New York, will feature more than 30 works, over half of which are new commissions across painting, sculpture, installation, video, and performance. Admission to the Asia Society Triennial is free and by advance ticketing only. For information about hours, ticket reservations, related programs, and to take an advanced tour, go to asiasociety.org/triennial. That's asiasociety.org/triennial. And now let's get back to the conversation.
And then you often talk about the social norms that prevent women from speaking up, raising their voices. I can understand because many years back I have the experience of attending a United Nations Population Fund on reproductive rights. And there were journalists from like South Asia or African countries who shared with me their concern, saying that in their society, you just cannot discuss issues related to gender or sex or contraception or rape or in public. And it's a big challenge for journalists. You want to convey the news, you want to report the news. But then there is this social norm that goes something like, women should blush when they talk about these issues. That can intimidate women from speaking up. So how do we break that barrier, the social norm that can intimidate women from speaking up?
We just have to speak about it. And what I wanted to do when I spoke about my own experience was that, before I went to press conference, even my friends or the journalists, senior journalists told me that I should wear certain clothes to speak about it. I should behave a certain way so they would trust me. And that's what I was hearing from even police officer investigators, that they questioned me that if you don't cry enough, you don't get upset, so we can't believe you. Of course I'm upset, but I have to just stay strong. And it was so shocking that they have certain idea of victim that they can trust. So what I decided was, whenever I'm speaking in public, I just behave myself. I don't want to wear this, mask of victim, because we live everyday life. We're the same as you are. But unfortunately, I still hear the words, victim don't smile or something like that. It's unbelievable. So I think we just have to be able to talk about it. And that's what MeToo did. And I was so happy to see Flower Demo, very peaceful protest against demanding change in our sex offense law, because I think it was the first time in public people come with flower in their hands and start sharing their own experience. I haven't seen that in public. I never seen that. So I think it's happening in Japan as well, so that they have space to be able to talk about it. So we just have to talk about it. We can't hide it.
You might have to start from something small, but it can grow into something bigger with an impact, perhaps. And this Me Too movement originated in the United States, but how do you plan to sort of cooperate with the similar movements that might exist in Asian countries? Do you have any plans to cooperate with them, or do you have any plans?
Well, I have been visiting our neighbor countries to discuss about that, and because we have very similar background, not being able to talk about this issue, and also having really the law has been a huge wall in front of us, so on. But I also see the progressive action in other country. So what we can do is I think we can exchange what they're doing in a good way, what we are doing, what was successful, how did we push that to the law to be executed and so on. So because we shared similar background, social norm, there are so many ways to share it. What I have experienced in South Korea was significant because we shared similar law, but their social movement was such a different take. People would go on the street to demand for the rights. I wonder why that didn't happen in the same way in Japan. But there are many reasons historically as well. But I think it's so inspiring to see others what they're doing. So there are many ways that we can share and be inspired. Yeah.
Right. And in the coronavirus world, you might have to be even more creative in sort of organizing a movement.
Mm-hmm.
You are a journalist and also a film director, and I wanted to ask you, what issues or topics you want to focus on, and the message that you want to continue to convey.
So, me and my friend, who's a Swedish journalist, created the company called Hanashi Films in London, and our motto is to shed the lights on the gender-based human rights issues, and it's very broad issue actually. But what I want to do through documentary film, the storytelling through the film, is that I want to show about someone's life and also reflect to ours, because what I realized working in a newsroom, sometimes just information goes through and consume, and that's it. There's no face, no name on it. So through documentary film, I think they have power to know this person, to get to know what's issue behind it, what's social issue behind it. And sometimes it can feel more personal. But I mean, every cases are personal. So I want to focus on creating documentary films on the gender issue.
But traveling has become almost impossible. How do you cope with not being able to travel to actually cover the issues in the field?
It's frustrating. Because the last trip I made was Sierra Leone a year ago. It's frustrating because I know, when the pandemic happened, the violence against women and children increased. And actually, when Sierra Leone, when the what was the pandemic that they had before? Ebola happened. Sexual violence against kids increased because they couldn't go to school, so they stayed in the community. So it's frustrating that we can't really cover hands-on. But again, we have now social network that we can share. So I felt like using the internet, talking to people, if there is only enough internet connection, though, made possible for us to connect borderless. So that is great result, but still today, especially filmmaking process, you need to go there and film. So it is frustrating that we can't do that now.
I've recently interviewed Dr. Mukwege, who is the Nobel Peace Prize laureate, who's worked tirelessly on sexual violence against women. And he, like you, said that in the pandemic, already vulnerable people are becoming even more vulnerable, or because of the lockdown, or because the economy not picking up, which is a really serious situation. So we need to keep an eye on that situation as well. And I noticed that you have produced a story on FGM, the female genital mutilation.
Yes.
What was the reason why you wanted to choose that topic?
So the reason why I went to Sierra Leone firsthand was because to interview why sexual violence against kids during Ebola time happened. So that was the reason I went there. But then I met girls and they start talking about FGM, and I got to know that 90% of women and girls have been experienced this painful experience, and it was shocking. So I met amazing two young girls who wanted to change that through radio. So I decided to make a documentary film about that.
And I watched the film.
Thank you.
And at first I thought that you were covering the issue, the problem. But you were trying to portray the girls themselves, the sort of life that they're leading, what their families say, the sort of living conditions that they are facing. Is that the style you want to take when you cover such issue?
Yeah, because, I'm myself a journalist and a filmmaker who is always behind the camera. But because I spoke about my own experience, I had to position myself in front of the camera, and I learned how violent that can be. And also how, the media can portray you. So what I wish is really portray a person as who they are, including their daily life. So that this person isn't just a victim. They have name, they have sisters, they have mother, they have loving people around them. And when you see that, I think you can start thinking, she's looking like my sister, and you feel more familiar towards the problem. And one of the comment that I got after screening the short clips of my film towards a Japanese university student, she said that she felt like she has been mentally FGM'd in Japan.
So she felt the pain.
The idea of FGM is, in Sierra Leone at least, is becoming a complete woman. So you can be recognized in society. In some work, they only can be offered who's been through this process. So it is a ticket. It's like becoming of the age thing. But it's risking many girls' life, and it can, it can create the physical issue, but also it mentally, psychologically can traumatize women and girls. So because just the idea of this is how women should be, and thankfully we don't have the practice in Japan, but there is a certain norm, certain shape that a society really creating. This is how Japanese women should behave.
Right. And the shocking part was that before this event started, we were chatting in the corridor, and you said that those norms do not necessarily be imposed by men. The women can proactively take part in creating that social norm. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So on FGM, speaking about FGM again, is it's being executed by a women's society in Sierra Leone, just because what the mother wants to make their daughter suitable for the society, so they can't be kicked out, so they can get a job, they can get married. So knowing they're putting their loved one in a risk, they still do so. And
to fit into the mold, sort of thing.
And I even interviewed who is the cutter of FGM, and she even says that there's nothing good about FGM, but it's tradition. You have to follow that to survive, she said. And that was shocking, that the social pressure is making that happen.
Okay. And I also noted that the title had episode 1. So does it mean that you have many more stories in the pipeline?
So actually, we are trying to make it as a feature film, so that it can be, played out in film festivals and in the wrong way. So what the short films that I made is available actually only in Japan, unfortunately, just because we are trying to develop this idea, this film in a longer term, because we want to follow these two girls creating radio show. They're trying their best to do so, knowing it's quite dangerous to speak about this. So we want to support from domestic, we want to support what they're doing, but also internationally. And that's how I've been helped from outside as well. It was so difficult to talk about from Japan, from inside, about topic of sexual violence. But when I stepped outside, I could find different way to talk about it. Mm-hmm. So that's what we are trying to do.
And it was quite impressive that those girls were speaking in the class. That they were going to schools and talking to young students and pupils why FGM is not good for you, that you should say no when it's about to happen to you. So they themselves are trying to become an agent of change.
They are the change, yes. I see a huge hope from them. And, I think seeing these role models for younger generation is very important. And so, I wish we can promote that as well through the film.
True. But like these gender-based human rights abuse, when they happen, there are journalists who keep an eye on those issues and keep covering the issue. Among the other journalists, what difference do you think you can make in covering such issues?
Well, I think this documentary filmmaking for me is all about Gwen. How do you translate that? The
encounter.
Yeah. I meet these people and I want to tell their story because I empathize with it. And so, I think if you have passion of that, everyone can make the film or everyone can tell the story. But I think I have experience of being the other side, to be covered, to be victimized as well. I think I know the pain, and also every time what I try to discuss with people, whoever I'm filming with, is what can happen afterwards, because sometimes we don't have control of the story when it's leave our hands.
Thank you for listening to Asia in Depth. You can subscribe to this podcast at Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, and check out past episodes at asiasociety.org/podcast. I'm Michelle Florcruz. See you next time.